The quiet hum of the deep space monitoring station filled the air as Captain Lisa Murphy sipped her coffee and watched the endless stream of data flowing across her screens. It was just another normal day at the edge of human space, where she and her small crew listened to the radio chatter of distant civilizations. Most of it was boring trade communications and diplomatic messages between alien species who thought humans were still too young to matter in galactic politics. That changed when the emergency signal cut through everything else like a knife through paper. The transmission was weak and breaking up, but the terror in the alien voice was clear even through the universal translator. Lisa sat up straight, her coffee forgotten as she increased the signal strength and called her communications officer over. "Captain, you need to hear this," said Lieutenant Amy Foster, her face pale as she worked the controls. "It's coming from the Zephyrian colony of New Haven, about 40 light years from here." The message played again, clearer this time. The speaker was a Zephyrian, one of the peaceful blue-skinned aliens who had never hurt anyone in their entire history. Their voice shook with fear as they described massive insectoid ships dropping from the sky, releasing swarms of creatures that killed everything in their path. "Please, anyone who can hear this," the alien begged. "The Vorthak have come to our world. They are killing everyone. Our children, our elders, everyone. We have no weapons, no way to fight them. They will finish us all in 3 days. Please, if there is anyone out there who can help us, we are at coordinates." The message, cut to static, then repeated from the beginning. Lisa felt her blood run cold. She had heard of the Vorthak swarm before. They were a nightmare that moved from system to system, eating entire planets clean of life before moving on to the next meal. Most species just ran when they heard the Vorthak were coming. Fighting them was considered impossible. "How long ago was this sent?" Lisa asked. "About 6 hours," Amy replied. "And Captain, I'm picking up similar distress calls from 3 other Zephyrian colonies. The swarm isn't just hitting New Haven. They're going after the entire species." Lisa stood up and walked to the main communications panel. She had 2 choices. The first was to send the message to Earth Command and wait for them to discuss it with the Galactic Council. That would take weeks, maybe months. The Council would debate and argue while the Zephyrians died. The second choice was to contact Admiral Jake Collins directly. She chose the second option. The Admiral's face appeared on the screen 15 minutes later. Jake Collins was a big man, with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many wars. Behind him, Lisa could see the bridge of his flagship, the massive dreadnought Terra's Shield. "Captain Murphy," he said, "I got your message. Play me that distress call." Lisa played the Zephyrian message. She watched the Admiral's face grow darker with each word. When it finished, there was a long silence. "How many ships do we have in that sector?" Collins asked. "None, sir. The nearest human vessel is a supply ship 3 days away." "And how many Zephyrians are we talking about?" "Intelligence says about 12 million across all their colonies, sir. They're one of the smaller species in the galaxy." Collins was quiet for another moment, then he leaned forward. "Captain, I want you to send a message to every Zephyrian colony. Tell them help is coming. Tell them to hold on for 72 hours. "Sir, with respect, we don't have any ships that can reach them in time. Even if we sent everything we have, it would take a week minimum." The Admiral smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant smile. "Captain, you're thinking too small. I'm not sending." "A few ships. I'm sending everything." Lisa blinked. "Sir?" "Every ship, Captain. Every destroyer, every cruiser, every carrier, every dreadnought, every support vessel we have. The entire Terran defense fleet." We're going to show these bugs what happens when they mess with innocent people. But, sir, that's over 2,000 ships. The logistics alone will be figured out on the way. I'm declaring a Class Alpha emergency. Every human military vessel is hereby ordered to converge on the New Haven system at maximum speed. No exceptions. Lisa felt her mouth go dry. A Class Alpha emergency hadn't been declared since the last time Earth itself was threatened. Sir, the Galactic Council will have questions. They'll want to know why we're mobilizing our entire fleet for one species. Let them ask, Collins said. By the time they finish talking, this will be over. Send the mobilization order to all fleet commanders. And Captain? Yes, sir. Make sure that distress call gets broadcast on every frequency in known space. I want everyone to hear it. I want them to understand what's happening to those people. The transmission ended, leaving Lisa staring at a blank screen. Around her, the monitoring station had gone completely quiet as her crew absorbed what they had just heard. Captain, Amy said softly, the Admiral really means it? Look at this. On Amy's screen, fleet movement orders were already appearing. Ship after ship was changing course, all heading toward the same destination. The heavy cruiser New York under Captain Ryan Brooks was the first to respond, followed by Admiral Kate Sullivan's carrier group. Within an hour, the entire human fleet was moving. Lisa watched the display in amazement. This wasn't just a rescue mission. This was the largest military operation in human history, all for a species that most humans had never even heard of. She thought about the Zephyrians, probably huddled in their shelters right now, waiting to die. They had no idea what was coming to help them. The galaxy saw humans as young and inexperienced, barely worth noticing in the grand scheme of things. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Lisa opened a channel to New Haven and began transmitting. Zephyrian colonies, this is Captain Lisa Murphy of the Human Monitoring Station, Echo 7. Your distress call has been received. Help is coming. Repeat, help is coming. Hold your positions and survive for 72 hours. The cavalry is on the way. As she sent the message, she couldn't help but smile. The Vorthak thought they were dealing with another helpless species. They had no idea they had just picked a fight with Deathworlders, and Deathworlders didn't just fight wars. They ended them. Space around Earth looked like a giant parking lot as ships from across human territory began arriving. Admiral Jake Collins stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched through the main window as vessel after vessel dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Each one was a message to the galaxy that humanity took threats to innocent people very seriously. The massive dreadnought, Earth's Fury, was the first to arrive, its captain Ryan Brooks immediately requesting permission to take point position. Behind it came the carrier Liberty, followed by dozens of destroyers and cruisers. Within 12 hours, the gathering fleet had grown to over 500 ships. Sir, reported Commander Paul Carter, the fleet's logistics coordinator, we're getting arrival confirmations from battle groups across 7 sectors. Admiral Kate Sullivan's carrier group just dropped in from the Proxima system. Admiral Troy Adams is bringing his dreadnought squadron from the outer colonies. Collins nodded, his eyes still fixed on the growing armada outside. How many total? 2,147 ships, sir, and still counting. This is the largest single fleet ever assembled by any species in galactic history. That was probably true, Collins thought. Most alien civilizations preferred small, efficient task forces for their military operations. They fought wars with dozens of ships, maybe a few hundred if it was a major conflict. What humanity was putting together was beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. "Admiral," came a voice from the communication station. "We're receiving a priority message from the Galactic Council." Collins wasn't surprised. The Council monitored all major fleet movements, and this one was impossible to hide. "Put them through." The holographic image of Counselor Vextar appeared in the center of the bridge. The tall, thin alien looked worried, which was understandable given what his sensors were probably telling him. "Admiral Collins," the alien said, "the Council has detected a massive mobilization of human forces. We must ask the reason for this unprecedented military buildup." "We're responding to a distress call," Collins replied simply. "A distress call that requires over 2,000 warships?" Vextar's voice rose in pitch. "Admiral, such a force could conquer half the galaxy. Surely this is excessive for a rescue operation." Collins turned to face the hologram directly. "Counselor, the Vorthak swarm is about to wipe out an entire species. 12 million innocent beings are going to die unless someone stops it. We intend to stop it. The proper procedure is to bring this matter before the full council for debate. We have protocols for—" "Your protocols take months," Collins cut him off. "These people have days. We're not asking for permission." The alien's skin changed color, a sign of agitation in his species. "Admiral, the human fleet you are assembling could be seen as a threat by other civilizations. You must understand how this appears." "I understand perfectly," Collins said. "This is how it should appear. The galaxy needs to learn that when innocent, people call for help. Humans answer." The transmission ended with Vextar looking very unhappy. "Well, that went about as expected," said Captain Ryan Brooks, who had transferred over from his ship for the final planning session. "They're scared of us." "Good," Collins replied. "Fear keeps people honest." Around the bridge, the human officers continued their work. This wasn't just about saving the Zephyrians anymore, though that remained the primary goal. This was about establishing humanity's place in galactic politics. Every species in known space was watching, and they were about to get a lesson in human military doctrine. Lieutenant Amy Foster, who had transferred from the monitoring station, was coordinating intelligence gathering. "Sir, we've got full tactical data on the Vorthak forces. They've deployed approximately 800 bioships around the Zephyrian colonies, with ground forces numbering in the millions." 800 ships, mused Admiral Kate Sullivan, who had also joined the command staff. "That's a significant force by galactic standards." "By galactic standards," Collins agreed. "We're not operating by galactic standards." The planning session continued for hours. Unlike most alien military operations, which focused on minimal force and precise objectives, the human plan was built around one simple concept: overwhelming superiority. They weren't just going to drive off the Vorthak. They were going to destroy them so completely that the swarm would think twice about ever threatening anyone again. Commander Paul Carter had somehow managed to organize the logistics for moving. Over 2,000 ships at once, complete with supply lines and support vessels. It was a feat that most alien civilizations would have considered impossible. "The beauty of it," Carter explained to the assembled officers, "is that we don't need to maintain complex supply lines. We're bringing enough firepower to end this, quickly. Get in. Destroy everything. Get out." Major Ben Parker, who would be leading the ground assault teams, was less interested in the big picture. "What about the Zephyrians caught in the combat zones? We need to make sure we don't accidentally hurt the people we're trying to save." "That's why we're bringing everything," Collins said. "With this much firepower, we can be surgical when we need to be and overwhelming when we choose to be. The Vorthak won't have time to use civilians as shields. As the final ships arrived and took their positions, the human fleet stretched across several thousand kilometers of space. It was a sight that would have been impossible to imagine just days earlier. Every human military vessel, from the smallest patrol boat to the largest dreadnought, was now part of the same mission. "Admiral," reported the communications officer, "all ships report ready for departure. Fleet formation is complete." Collins looked out at his armada one more time. In a few hours, they would make the jump to faster-than-light travel. 3 days after that, they would arrive at New Haven. The Vorthak swarm had no idea what was coming for them. "Signal all ships," Collins ordered. "Operation Hammerfall begins now. Destination, New Haven system. Objective, total elimination of Vorthak forces and rescue of all Zephyrian civilians." He paused, then added, "And make sure this message gets broadcast on all galactic frequencies. I want everyone to know that when humans promise to help, we deliver." The massive fleet began to move, 2,000 ships acting as one. Behind them, Earth grew smaller and smaller until it was just another star in the darkness. Ahead of them lay the largest military operation in human history, deep in the heart of the Vorthak bioship. Consuming darkness, the hive mind felt something it had never experienced before: confusion. For 3 million years, the collective consciousness had devoured its way across the galaxy, consuming entire species without ever encountering serious resistance. The pattern was always the same: find a world with life, attack with overwhelming numbers, feed on the remains, move on. But something was wrong with this feeding cycle. The sensor organisms embedded in the ship's living walls detected massive disturbances in faster-than-light space. Ships were coming toward the New Haven system. Lots of ships. Far more ships than any civilization had ever sent against the Vorthak before. The hive mind reached out with its psychic senses, trying to understand what it was detecting. The approaching fleet was enormous, easily 10 times larger than anything the galaxy typically assembled for defense. But that wasn't what confused the ancient intelligence. What confused it was the species signature. These weren't the usual defenders that occasionally tried to interfere with a feeding. This wasn't the Galactic Council's peacekeeping force with their careful, measured response. These ships carried the biosignature of a species the hive mind had never encountered before: humans. The name meant nothing to the collective consciousness. In its vast memory banks, there was no record of this species ever fighting the swarm. They were listed as a young race, barely worth noticing. Yet they were approaching with a fleet that defied all logic. War leader Vorthak, one of the hive mind's primary tactical sub-minds, reported from the surface of New Haven. "The small ones continue to hide in their shelters. We will have consumed them all within 2 cycles, but these approaching ships—" "Yes," the hive mind replied through 1,000 voices at once. "We sense them too. Send scouts to investigate." A dozen bioships detached from the main swarm and headed toward the edge of the system. They would intercept the human fleet while it was still in faster-than-light travel and determine what kind of threat these unknown aliens represented. The hive mind expected to find a typical galactic response force. Perhaps a few hundred ships at most, staffed by beings who thought war was a game with rules and limits. It had crushed such forces before. What the scouts found instead defied everything the Vorthak thought they knew about galactic civilization. The human fleet was massive, beyond comprehension. Ship after ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, creating a wall of metal and energy that stretched across space like an artificial constellation. The lead vessel alone was larger than most species' entire military forces. But size wasn't what shocked the hive mind. What shocked it was the energy signatures coming from those ships. These humans had brought weapons designed for planetary destruction. Antimatter torpedoes, fusion lances, quantum disruptors, and devices the hive mind didn't even recognize. This wasn't a rescue force. This was an extinction fleet. Impossible, the collective consciousness whispered to itself. No species brings such power to a single battle. The scout ships moved closer, trying to get detailed scans of the human vessels. What they found made the hive mind experience something else it had never felt before: doubt. Every human ship was built for war, not defense, not peacekeeping, not the careful balance most galactic civilizations preferred. Pure, overwhelming war. The weapons alone could have sterilized dozens of worlds. The troops they carried weren't peacekeepers or negotiators. They were soldiers trained for total victory. "War leader," the hive mind commanded, "withdraw the surface forces. All bioships are to take defensive positions." "But the feeding is not complete," Vorthak protested. "We have only consumed half the small ones. The feeding will wait. We must understand what these humans want." That question was answered when the human fleet reached communication range. The lead ship, a massive dreadnought that radiated power like a small star, broadcast a message on all frequencies. The voice that spoke was calm, almost conversational. It belonged to Admiral Jake Collins, though the hive mind didn't know his name yet. "Attention, Vorthak forces," the human said. "This is Admiral Collins of the Terran Defense Fleet. You have attacked a peaceful species under the protection of humanity. You will immediately cease all hostile actions against the Zephyrians and withdraw from this system." The hive mind processed this demand with growing bewilderment. Protection of humanity? The humans had never even met the Zephyrians before this week. What kind of species claimed to protect aliens they had no relationship with? Furthermore, the Admiral continued, "You will release all Zephyrian civilians currently being held by your forces. You have 1 hour to comply with these demands. 1 hour. The hive mind had been given ultimatums before, usually with days or weeks to consider them. 1 hour wasn't a negotiation. It was barely enough time to respond. And if we refuse?" The hive mind finally replied, speaking through the bioship closest to the human fleet. The response came immediately, as if the humans had been expecting the question. "Then we will demonstrate why Earth is classified as a death world." The transmission ended, leaving the Vorthak collective consciousness in stunned silence. Death world. The hive mind knew that classification. It referred to planets where life was so hostile, so violent, that only the most aggressive species could survive. But Deathworld species were supposed to be rare, primitive, focused only on their own survival. They weren't supposed to build fleets like this. The hive mind reached out to its tactical subminds, seeking guidance. How did one fight an enemy that brought overwhelming force to every battle? How did one negotiate with beings who seemed to consider total victory the only acceptable outcome? "War leader," it commanded, "what is our force strength?" 800 bioships, War Mind, each with full ground forces. We outnumber their vessels. But not their firepower, the hive mind realized. Its sensors were providing detailed analysis of the human weapons now. The smallest human destroyer carried enough firepower to level a continent. The largest ships could crack planets. These weren't the careful, limited responses the galaxy was used to. These humans had come prepared to end the Vorthak swarm permanently, For the first time in 3 million years, the hive mind considered the possibility that it might lose a battle. Worse, it was beginning to suspect that the humans weren't just here to rescue the Zephyrians. They were here to send a message to the entire galaxy, a message written in fire and death that would make every species think twice before threatening innocent life. The hour deadline was counting down, and the hive mind still had no idea how to respond to beings who fought wars like natural disasters. The hour deadline passed without a response from the Vorthak swarm. Admiral Jake Collins had expected as much. In his experience, bullies rarely backed down when confronted the first time. They needed to be taught respect through demonstration. All ships, he broadcast to the fleet. Weapons free. Rules of engagement are simple. Destroy everything that isn't Zephyrian. Show no mercy, take no prisoners, and make this lesson one the galaxy will never forget. The human fleet spread out into attack formation with the precision of a machine. Captain Ryan Brooks led the heavy assault group straight at the center of the Vorthak formation, while Admiral Kate Sullivan's carriers moved to flank positions. Every ship knew its role. Every captain understood the mission. The Vorthak finally responded by launching their own attack force. 300 bioships, each one a living creature bred for war, surged forward to meet the human advance. The hive mind was confident that sheer numbers would overwhelm these strange newcomers, just as it had overwhelmed every other species that had dared to challenge the swarm. The confidence lasted exactly 14 minutes. The first human salvo was like watching stars explode. Fusion lances stabbed out from the dreadnoughts, each beam carrying enough energy to vaporize a small moon. Antimatter torpedoes streaked through space, leaving trails of annihilation in their wake. The smaller human ships added their firepower to the barrage, creating a wall of destruction that no living thing could survive. The lead Vorthak bioship simply ceased to exist. One moment they were massive creatures charging through space, the next they were expanding clouds of superheated plasma. The hive mind felt each death like a physical blow, the loss of hundreds of thousands of individual minds linked to its consciousness. But the humans weren't finished. Second wave. Fire, ordered Captain Brooks from his position on the dreadnought Earth's Fury. His ship alone carried enough firepower to level a continent, and he used every bit of it. The massive vessel's main guns spoke with voices like thunder, sending streams of coherent energy across the battlefield. More Vorthak ships died, then more. The bioships tried to return fire, but their organic weapons were no match for human engineering. Where Vorthak energy beams scorched armor, human weapons deleted matter from existence. Where bioships could regenerate damage over time, human vessels had shields that turned attacks into harmless light shows. This is impossible, the hive mind whispered to itself as it watched its forces being systematically destroyed. No species fights like this. No one brings such overwhelming force to a single battle. The humans had an answer for that, too. Major Ben Parker led the first boarding action against a wounded Vorthak bioship, taking 50 Marines in powered armor through a hull breach his ship had created. The Vorthak had never faced human soldiers in close combat before, and the experience was educational. The insectoid warriors were tough, fast, and vicious. They had claws that could slice through most known materials and natural armor that could stop conventional weapons. In their own estimation, they were the perfect ground combat species. They had never met Deathworlders. Parker's first shot from his plasma rifle took the head off a Vorthak warrior charging down the ship's organic corridor. His second and third shots killed 2 more before they could react. Behind him, his Marines spread out with the efficiency of a pack of predators, their weapons systems tracking and eliminating targets faster than the insects could respond. "These things are tough," reported Sergeant Mike Johnson over the radio as he put 3 rounds into a warrior that kept trying to fight despite missing most of its torso. "But they're not built for this kind of war." The Vorthak warriors fought with savage courage, but courage wasn't enough against soldiers who had trained their entire lives for exactly this kind of combat. Human beings had evolved on a world where everything tried to kill them, and they had learned to return the favor with interest. Parker's team reached the bioship's nerve center in less than 10 minutes, leaving a trail of dead insects behind them. The ship's brain, a massive organic computer that served as both pilot and tactical center, tried to surrender when it saw them coming. Humans didn't accept surrenders from genocidal monsters. "Bioship neutralized," Parker reported as his team planted charges throughout the nerve center. Moving to next target. In space, the one-sided battle continued. Admiral Troy Adams brought his squadron of heavy cruisers around the flank of the Vorthak formation, catching a group of bioships trying to retreat. His ships opened fire at point-blank range, turning living vessels into clouds of organic debris. "Admiral Collins," reported Captain Laura Evans from her stealth destroyer Silent Death, "I'm reading massive electromagnetic distress signals from the Vorthak command ship. I think we're hurting the hive mind." Collins nodded grimly. Good. He wanted the hive mind to feel every death, to understand the price of threatening innocent people. The Vorthak had spent millions of years spreading terror across the galaxy. Today they would learn what terror felt like from the receiving end. The hive mind was indeed in agony. Each destroyed bioship was part of its extended consciousness, and losing them was like having pieces of its own mind ripped away. It had fought thousands of battles over the millennia, but never like this. Other species fought to defend themselves, or their territory. These humans fought like living weapons, each one focused on total destruction of the enemy. Worse, they were winning. In less than an hour, the Vorthak had lost over half their fleet. The humans had barely taken any damage at all. "War leader," the hive mind called desperately to its tactical sub-mind. "We must withdraw." Withdraw? Vorthak was stunned. The swarm had never retreated from battle before. "But we still have forces on the surface. The feeding is not complete." The feeding is over, the hive mind replied. "Signal all surface forces to return to their ships immediately. We are leaving this system." But the humans had anticipated this too. Admiral Sullivan's carrier group had been positioned specifically to block the retreat routes from the planet. As the surviving Vorthak bioships tried to reach their ground forces, they found their path, blocked by human vessels that had been waiting for exactly this moment. "Now they learn the rest of the lesson," Collins said quietly as he watched the trap close. "When you threaten innocent people, you don't get to just walk away." The final phase of the battle was less a fight than an execution. The remaining Vorthak ships were caught between the planet and the human fleet, with nowhere to run and no hope of victory. One by one, they were hunted down and destroyed by an enemy that showed no mercy and accepted no surrender. When it was over, the space around New Haven was filled with the expanding debris of what had once been the most feared force in the galaxy. Of the 800 bioships that had come to devour the Zephyrians, exactly 0 survived. The hive mind, reduced now to a single damaged command ship hiding in the outer system, felt something else it had never experienced before: fear. True, primal fear of a predator species that was better at killing than even the Vorthak themselves. The humans had sent a message, written in fire across the void. But the hive mind was beginning to suspect that this was only the beginning of that message, not the end. Any reasonable military force would have declared victory after destroying the Vorthak fleet. The immediate threat was eliminated, the Zephyrians were safe, and the point had been made. A normal species would have begun rescue operations and prepared to return home. Humanity was not normal. Admiral Jake Collins stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical display as his fleet reorganized itself. The scattered debris of 800 bio-ships glittered in the light of the local star, but Collins wasn't looking at the wreckage. He was looking at the sensor readings from deeper in the system. "Report," he ordered. Lieutenant Amy Foster consulted her displays. "Sir, we've detected Vorthak staging areas on 3 moons in the outer system. Looks like supply bases and breeding facilities. Plus, we're tracking one surviving command ship trying to reach the edge of the system." "Breeding facilities," Collins repeated, his voice cold. "They were planning to turn this entire system into a nest." "Sir," Captain Ryan Brooks spoke up from his position at the tactical station, "the immediate threat is over. We could begin evacuation of the Zephyrian survivors and—" "No," Collins cut him off. "We're not leaving any Vorthak infrastructure intact. I want every base, every facility, every trace of their presence in this system completely destroyed." Brooks blinked. "Sir, that's going beyond the original mission parameters." "The original mission was to save the Zephyrians," Collins agreed. "The expanded mission is to make sure this never happens again. Not here, not anywhere." Admiral Kate Sullivan's voice came over the communication system from her carrier. "Admiral, I'm reading those staging areas too. My bombers can handle them, but it's going to take some serious firepower." "Then use serious firepower," Collins replied. "I want those facilities reduced to atoms." What followed was a demonstration of human military doctrine that stunned everyone watching, including the humans' own allies. Where most galactic civilizations would have been content with driving off the immediate threat, humanity escalated to total elimination of enemy assets. Commander Nick Hayes led the first bomber wave against the Vorthak staging area on the largest moon. His squadron of 20 heavy bombers approached their target with the calm efficiency of exterminators dealing with an infestation. "Target acquired," Hayes reported as his lead bomber lined up on the first facility, reading multiple biostructures and what looks like a hive mind relay node. "Confirmed, Commander," came the reply from Admiral Sullivan. "You are authorized to use planet-killer munitions. Make sure there's nothing left." Planet-killer munitions. The Zephyrians, who were monitoring human communications from their emergency shelters, couldn't believe what they were hearing. These weapons were designed to crack worlds, not destroy military bases. Using them on moon installations was like swatting a fly with a sledgehammer, but the humans weren't interested in proportional response. Hayes's bomber released a single antimatter torpedo with a yield equivalent to a small star going supernova. The weapon struck the moon's surface and simply deleted everything within a 50-kilometer radius. The Vorthak breeding facility, which had taken months to grow, ceased to exist in less than a second. "First target eliminated," Hayes reported with the same tone he might have used to order lunch. "Moving to target 2. The second facility died just as quickly, followed by the third. In the space of an hour, the humans had erased every trace of Vorthak presence from the outer moons. But they still weren't finished. Captain Laura Evans, commanding the stealth destroyer Silent Death, had been tracking the surviving Vorthak command ship as it fled toward the edge of the system. The bioship was moving fast, carrying what remained of the hive mind's consciousness away from the disaster. "Admiral," Evans reported, The command ship is almost to the jump point. If it escapes, it'll carry word of our capabilities to the rest of the swarm." "Can you intercept?" Collins asked. "Negative, sir. It's too far away for a conventional pursuit." Collins smiled coldly. "Who said anything about conventional?" He opened a channel to the dreadnought World Breaker, one of the largest ships in the human fleet. "Captain Derek Stone, I need you to demonstrate our new long-range interdiction." "Capability!" Stone's voice came back excited. "Sir, are you authorizing use of the quantum lance array?" "I am." "Fire when ready." The quantum lance was a weapon that most species considered purely theoretical. It used controlled quantum entanglement to deliver energy across vast distances, essentially creating a beam that ignored normal space-time limitations. The human fleet had exactly one working prototype, mounted on the World Breaker for field testing. Stone's ship rotated slowly until its main weapon array was pointed at the fleeing Vorthak vessel. The lance charged for 30 seconds, drawing power from the ship's entire reactor output. When it fired, space itself seemed to ripple. The Vorthak command ship, over 1 billion kilometers away, simply vanished. One moment it was accelerating toward safety. The next, it was an expanding cloud of superheated plasma. The hive mind's death scream echoed across psychic frequencies, reaching every Vorthak facility within 100 light years. "Target eliminated," Stone reported. Quantum Lance performed flawlessly. The elimination of the command ship sent shockwaves through the galactic community. Every species with the ability to monitor interstellar communications had been watching the battle. And what they saw defied everything they thought they knew about warfare. The humans hadn't just won. They had achieved total victory with such overwhelming force that it redefined what military supremacy looked like. They had weapons that could destroy targets across entire star systems. They had troops that could board enemy vessels and clear them in minutes. They had shown tactical coordination that turned their massive fleet into a single, unstoppable weapon. But what truly terrified the galaxy was the casualness of it all. The humans spoke about planet-killing weapons the way other species discussed patrol schedules. They used strategic-level firepower for tactical objectives. They escalated beyond all reason and made it look routine. Commander Paul Carter, monitoring communications from other galactic powers, reported the reactions to Admiral Collins. "Sir, we're receiving urgent communications from 17 different species governments. They're all asking the same questions. Who are you people and what do you want?" Collins considered the question seriously. What did humanity want? They had saved the Zephyrians, destroyed the immediate Vorthak threat, and demonstrated their military capabilities to the entire galaxy. Mission accomplished by any reasonable standard. But Collins was remembering other distress calls his monitoring. Stations had picked up over the years. Other species crying for help while the galaxy debated and delayed. Other innocent civilizations that had been wiped out while politicians argued about proper procedures. "Open a channel to all galactic frequencies," he ordered. "Sir?" Carter asked. "All frequencies. I want every species in known space to hear this." The channel opened, and Collins began to speak. His words would be recorded, analyzed, and debated. For generations to come. This is Admiral Jake Collins of the Terran Defense Fleet. Today, the Vorthak swarm attacked the peaceful Zephyrian people with the intent to commit genocide. This aggression has been met with total defeat. The Vorthak forces in this system have been completely eliminated. He paused, letting that sink in across 100 worlds. Let this serve as notice to any species considering similar actions. Humanity will not tolerate the targeting of innocent civilians for any reason. Attack peaceful beings, and you will face the full might of the human fleet. There will be no negotiation, no compromise, no mercy. Another pause. We do not seek conquest or territory. We seek only to ensure that no species ever again faces extinction while the galaxy watches and does nothing. This is our promise, and this is our threat. The transmission ended, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence. The Zephyrians had been saved, but something larger had changed in the balance of galactic power. Humanity had announced itself not as a member of the galactic community, but as its self-appointed protector, and they had the firepower to back up that claim. While the human fleet maintained position around New Haven, Admiral Jake Collins made a decision that would reshape galactic politics forever. He ordered every moment of the battle to be recorded, analyzed, and broadcast to every corner of known space. Lieutenant Colonel Steve Morrison, the fleet's psychological operations specialist, had been documenting everything from the moment the first shots were fired. Now he found himself with the most important propaganda mission in human history. "Sir," Morrison reported to the Admiral, "we've got complete battle footage from 17 different angles, plus sensor readings that show exactly what our weapons did to their bioships. The data is comprehensive." "Good," Collins replied. "I want every species in the galaxy to see exactly what happened here. No edited versions, no diplomatic summaries. I want them to see the raw truth of what human military power looks like." Morrison had been working in psychological operations for 20 years, but he had never seen anything quite like this. Most military footage was classified, carefully edited, or released years after the fact. The Admiral was ordering immediate, unfiltered broadcast of humanity's complete military capabilities to potential enemies. It was either brilliant or insane, and Morrison was starting to think it might be both. The first broadcasts went out within hours of the battle's end. Every galactic communication network received the same package: complete sensor logs of the human fleet's arrival, tactical recordings of the battle itself, and detailed analysis of the weapon systems that had annihilated the Vorthak swarm. The reaction was immediate and universal: terror. Captain Michelle Clark, the fleet's documentation officer, monitored the responses as they poured in from across the galaxy. She had been recording not just the battle, but the aftermath. Her cameras captured the Zephyrian survivors emerging from their shelters, their blue faces streaked with tears of relief and amazement. But Clark was more interested in the responses from other species. "Admiral," she reported, "we're getting reactions from every major government in known space. The Altarian Council just went into emergency session. The Proxima Federation has recalled all their ships to defensive positions. And, sir, the Galactic Council is demanding an immediate explanation for what they're calling disproportionate use of force." Collins laughed at that last part. "Disproportionate? We used exactly the amount of force necessary to solve the problem permanently." The broadcasts had a secondary effect that Morrison found fascinating. Species that had been considering their own aggressive actions suddenly became much more peaceful. 3 different territorial disputes that had been escalating toward war were suddenly resolved through diplomacy. Pirates who had been raiding shipping lanes went into hiding. Even the notorious Kazakh hegemony, known for their slave raids, suspended all military operations. The message was clear: if you hurt innocent people, the humans might notice you. The Zephyrians themselves were struggling to process what had happened to them. Elder Zeftel, the closest thing their species had to a leader, requested a meeting with Admiral Collins to express their gratitude. "Admiral Collins," the elderly alien said through the translator, We cannot find words in any language to express our thanks. You saved not just our lives, but our entire species. You're welcome, Collins replied simply. But I want you to understand something. This wasn't charity. This is how the galaxy should work. When innocent people are threatened, someone should step up to help them. The Zephyrian looked confused. But you had no obligation to us. We are not allies, not trading partners. We had never even spoken before this week. That's exactly the point, Collins said. Help shouldn't depend on politics or economics. It should depend on who needs it. The conversation was being recorded, of course, and broadcast along with everything else. The galaxy was learning not just about human military power, but about human philosophy. They were seeing a species that considered the protection of innocent life to be a moral imperative, regardless of the cost. It was a philosophy that terrified many galactic governments. Morrison's analysis reports made for interesting reading. Species across the galaxy were frantically reassessing their own military capabilities, comparing them to what the humans had demonstrated. The conclusions were uniformly depressing from their perspective. The Altarian Council's entire fleet would have been destroyed by a single human dreadnought. The Proxima Federation's most powerful weapons were barely equal to the secondary armament on human destroyers. Even the mighty Kazakh hegemony, with their reputation for military might, could field less than a tenth of the firepower humanity had brought to New Haven. But raw firepower wasn't what scared them most. It was the coordination, the tactical sophistication, and the complete lack of hesitation in using overwhelming force. The humans had treated the annihilation of 800 enemy ships like a routine training exercise. "Admiral," Morrison reported, "I'm seeing some interesting psychological effects from the broadcasts. Several species are already reaching out, through diplomatic channels, offering trade agreements and mutual defense pacts. They want to be on our side. And others? Others are going the opposite direction. The Vorthak swarm has issued what amounts to a declaration of war against humanity. They're calling for all hive minds to unite against the Deathworlder threat." Collins nodded. He had expected as much. The Vorthak couldn't allow this defeat to stand without response, and their psychology didn't permit surrender or negotiation. They would come back with everything they had. Good. That would save humanity the trouble of hunting them down. Captain Clark's cameras had also captured something that Morrison found particularly valuable: the reactions of other military officers from various species who had observed the battle. Their professional assessments were being shared through unofficial channels, and they painted a picture of complete human military superiority. "They fight like a single organism," reported one Altarian commander. 2,000 ships acting as one mind with coordination that should be impossible at that scale. "Their weapons technology is at least 50 years ahead of anything we have," admitted a Proxima admiral. "Maybe 100 years. They're using principles we don't even understand." "The psychological effect is devastating," wrote a Kazakh tactical analyst. "They don't just defeat enemies. They erase them so completely that other potential threats reconsider their entire existence." Morrison compiled all of this into a comprehensive report that would become the foundation for humanity's new diplomatic strategy. The galaxy now understood that humans were not just another species to be managed or ignored. They were a force of nature that had appointed themselves as the guardians of innocent life. "Sir," Morrison concluded in his final assessment, "the psychological impact of this operation has exceeded all projections. We've established military superiority, moral authority, and strategic intimidation all at once. Any species considering aggressive action against civilians will now have to factor in the possibility of human intervention. Collins reviewed the report with satisfaction. The battle at New Haven had lasted less than a day, but its effects would shape galactic politics for generations. Every species in known space now understood that humanity played by different rules, and those rules were simple. Hurt innocent people, and humanity would hurt you back. With interest, the age of galactic bullies was coming to an end, whether they liked it or not. Any rational military commander would have declared the mission complete after destroying the Vorthak forces at New Haven. The Zephyrians were safe, the immediate threat was eliminated, and the point had been made to the galaxy. Admiral Jake. Collins was a rational military commander. He was also human. "Admiral," reported Lieutenant Amy Foster from her intelligence station, "we've confirmed the locations of Vorthak staging areas in 3 neighboring star systems. Looks like they were planning a coordinated campaign against multiple species in this sector." Collins studied the tactical display showing the nearby systems. Each one contained Vorthak breeding facilities, supply depots, and fleet bases. In galactic military doctrine, these would be considered legitimate targets only if they posed an immediate threat. Since the Vorthak forces at New Haven had been eliminated, most species would consider the matter closed. Humanity had different ideas about finishing fights. "Signal the fleet," Collins ordered. "We're extending operations to include the elimination of all Vorthak assets within 50 light years. I want every base, every ship, every facility they have in this region completely destroyed. Captain Ryan." Brooks looked up from his station. "Sir, that's going to require splitting our forces across multiple systems. It's a significant expansion of the mission scope." "The mission scope is the complete elimination of the Vorthak threat to innocent civilizations," Collins replied. "That threat doesn't end at the edge of this star system." What followed was a campaign of such systematic destruction that it redefined what galactic warfare looked like. The human fleet divided itself into 3 battle groups, each one larger than most species' entire military forces, and began methodically hunting down every trace of Vorthak presence in the region. Captain Derek Stone led the first battle group to the Kepler 442 system, where intelligence had located a major Vorthak breeding complex. The biofacilities covered 3 moons and had been growing for decades, producing the living ships that had terrorized the galaxy. Stone's approach was typically human. Complete overkill. "All ships, prepare for orbital bombardment," he ordered, as his force took position above the first moon. "I want those facilities sterilized down to the bacterial level." The bombardment lasted 6 hours and used enough firepower to glass a small planet. When it was finished, the 3 moons were lifeless rocks with no trace that anything had ever lived there. The breeding complex that had taken the Vorthak 50 years to build was erased in a single afternoon. "First target eliminated," Stone reported to Admiral Collins. "Moving to the supply depot in the asteroid belt." Meanwhile, Admiral Kate Sullivan took her carrier group to the Ross 128 system, where the Vorthak had established a major fleet base. Her approach was more surgical but equally devastating. "Launch all fighters," she ordered as her ships approached the biostation orbiting the system's gas giant. "I want boarding teams on every structure. Capture what intelligence you can, then destroy everything." Major Ben Parker led the boarding assault personally, taking 3 companies of Marines onto the station. What they found there made even the hardened soldiers angry. The Vorthak had been using the station as more than just a military base. It was a processing center for captured civilians from dozens of species, beings who had been taken during raids and were being prepared for consumption. The holding areas contain thousands of sentient beings from across the galaxy, all waiting to become food for the hive mind. "Admiral," Parker reported, his voice tight with controlled rage, "you need to see this. These monsters have been collecting prisoners from everywhere. There are people here from species I've never even heard of." Sullivan's response was immediate. "Evacuate all civilians to the medical ships, then burn that station to the ground." The rescue operation took 12 hours and saved over 15,000 beings from 43 different species. But Sullivan wasn't finished. She used the intelligence gathered from the station to locate 17 more Vorthak facilities across 3 star systems. All 17 were destroyed within the week. Admiral Troy Adams took the 3rd battle group to the Proxima Centauri B system, where the Vorthak had established their regional command center. This facility was different from the others. It was where the local hive mind nodes coordinated their activities across multiple star systems. Adams had brought some of humanity's most exotic weapons for this mission. "Deploy the quantum virus," he ordered as his ships surrounded the massive biostructure. "Let's see how their organic computers handle a little digital warfare." The quantum virus was a human innovation that other species considered impossible. A computer program that could infect organic neural networks. It spread through the Vorthak command structure like wildfire, turning their own biological systems against them. Within hours, the entire facility was consuming itself from the inside out as the infected neural tissue triggered catastrophic biological failures. The hive mind nodes died screaming, their collective consciousness fragmenting as the virus spread. "Command center eliminated," Adams reported. "The entire regional network is down." The systematic destruction continued for 2 weeks. Every Vorthak facility within 50 light-years of New Haven was located, attacked, and completely destroyed. The humans didn't just defeat the swarm forces, they erased every trace of Vorthak presence in the region. Commander Janet Price coordinated the orbital bombardments that turned entire worlds from Vorthak nest planets back into lifeless rocks. Commander Nick Hayes led bomber squadrons that hunted down fleeing bioships and destroyed them one by one. Captain Laura Evans used her stealth destroyer to track down hidden facilities and call in strikes that left nothing but craters. The galaxy watched in fascination and horror as humanity demonstrated what total war looked like when waged by a species that considered overkill to be standard operating procedure. "Admiral," reported Lieutenant Colonel Steve Morrison, "we're receiving communications from the Galactic Council. They're demanding that we cease operations immediately. They say we're engaging in acts of genocide against the Vorthak." Collins considered this for a moment. Genocide was typically defined as the systematic extermination of a species or group. But the Vorthak weren't being targeted for what they were. They were being targeted for what they did. "Send a reply to the Council," Collins ordered. "Inform them that we are engaged in the elimination of an active threat to galactic security. The Vorthak have chosen to make themselves into weapons pointed at innocent civilizations. We are simply defending those civilizations." He paused, then added, "Also inform them that any attempt to interfere with our operations will be considered an act of hostility." The threat was subtle but clear. The Galactic Council, like everyone else, had seen what human weapons could do. They decided not to press the issue. By the end of the campaign, the humans had destroyed over 3,000 Vorthak facilities, eliminated 4 regional hive mind nodes, and rescued nearly 50,000 prisoners from dozens of species. The Vorthak presence in an entire sector of the galaxy had been completely eradicated. But the most important result wasn't military. It was psychological. Every species in known space now understood that humanity didn't just fight wars, they ended them. Completely. Forever. When humans decided that something was a threat to innocent life, that threat ceased to exist. The message was received loud and clear across the galaxy. If you prey on the weak, humanity will hunt you down and eliminate you with such thoroughness that future species will debate whether you ever existed at all. It was a policy that would reshape galactic civilization for generations to come. 3 months after the Battle of New Haven, the galaxy was a very different place. Admiral Jake Collins stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Terran naval base orbiting New Haven's primary moon, watching human patrol ships conduct their regular sweeps of the system. Officially, the base was there to protect the Zephyrians from any future Vorthak incursions. Unofficially, everyone understood that it was a statement written in steel and concrete. Humanity was here to stay. The base itself was a marvel of human engineering that left visiting aliens speechless. It could construct and maintain a fleet of 500 ships, manufacture weapons that most species couldn't even understand, and project power across dozens of star systems. But more importantly, it was a symbol of humanity's new role in galactic politics. Elder Zeph Tell, now serving as the official liaison between his people and the human fleet, approached Collins with his usual mixture of gratitude and bewilderment. "Admiral," the elderly Zephyrian said, "we have received another communication from the Galactic Council. They are asking when you plan to withdraw your forces from our system." Collins smiled. "Tell them we'll withdraw when we're satisfied that the Zephyrians are completely safe from future threats. Given the galaxy's track record on protecting innocent species, that might take a while." It was a polite way of saying never, and everyone involved understood that perfectly. The transformation of galactic politics had been swift and dramatic. Captain Lisa Murphy, now promoted to Admiral and commanding the expanded Deep Space Monitoring Network, reported the changes to Collins on a weekly basis. "Sir," she said during their latest briefing, "piracy is down 93% in sectors where we maintain a presence. The Kazakh hegemony has officially renounced slave raiding, and the Altarian Council just passed a resolution condemning all forms of civilian targeting in warfare." The numbers told the story. Species that had spent centuries preying on weaker civilizations had suddenly discovered the virtues of peaceful coexistence. The mere possibility of human intervention had transformed bullies into diplomats overnight. But not everyone was happy with the new order. The Galactic Council, in particular, was struggling to maintain relevance in a galaxy where humanity had appointed itself the ultimate arbiter of right and wrong. Counselor Vexitar had requested this meeting specifically to address what he called the human problem. Collins received him in the base's main conference room, a space designed to impress visitors with both human technological capability and military power. The walls displayed real-time tactical information from across human space, showing the positions of over 3,000 warships spread across 40 star systems. "Admiral Collins," Vexitar began, "the Council appreciates humanity's commitment to galactic peace, but we must discuss the concerning expansion of human military presence throughout this region." "What concerns?" Collins asked mildly. "You have established permanent military bases in 17 star systems. You have declared unilateral protection over 43 species that never requested your help. Your ships patrol trade routes that have been neutral for thousands of years. This is not peacekeeping. This is occupation." Collins considered the alien's words carefully. From a certain perspective, Vexitar wasn't wrong. Humanity had massively expanded its presence and influence in the months following New Haven. But Collins saw it differently. "Counselor," he said, "in the past year alone, how many species have been wiped out while the Council debated the proper response? Vextar's skin shifted color slightly. The Council follows established procedures for addressing interstellar conflicts. These procedures have maintained galactic stability for the strong, Collins interrupted. Your procedures work great for species that can defend themselves. They work less well for species like the Zephyrians, who would have been extinct while you were still scheduling committee meetings. The truth of that statement hung in the air between them. Everyone knew that the Galactic Council's response to the Vorthak threat would have taken months to organize, assuming they responded at all. Nevertheless, Vextar continued, the Council cannot accept the precedent of one species unilaterally deciding galactic policy. If humanity wishes to play a larger role in galactic affairs, it must work within established frameworks. Collins leaned back in his chair. And if we refuse? The question seemed to catch Vextar off guard. In galactic politics, species typically negotiated and compromised until they reached agreements that everyone could live with. The idea of simply refusing to participate in the system was foreign to him. Admiral, surely you understand that the galaxy requires cooperation and consensus to function properly. The galaxy requires protection for innocent life to function properly, Collins replied. Everything else is just politics. The meeting ended without resolution, which was itself a kind of resolution. Humanity had made it clear that they would not subordinate their protection of innocent species to galactic bureaucracy. The Council could accept that or not, but it wouldn't change human policy. Captain Michelle Clark had been documenting the broader changes across galactic civilization, and her reports made for fascinating reading. Species that had never spoken to each other before were forming mutual defense pacts, hoping that collective security might spare them from needing human protection. Trade routes that had been dangerous for centuries were now completely safe, as pirates and raiders had found safer professions. Most interesting of all, several species had begun studying human military doctrine and philosophy, trying to understand how one civilization could be so effective at projecting power across such vast distances. Admiral, Clark reported, the Proxima Federation has officially requested training assistance from our military. They want to learn human tactics and weapon systems. Approved, Collins said immediately. The more species that can defend themselves effectively, the fewer will need to defend personally. It was a practical approach that reflected humanity's long-term thinking. Rather than trying to police the entire galaxy permanently, they were working to create a situation where other species could protect themselves and each other. The Vorthak, meanwhile, had tried to respond to their defeats with a massive counterattack 6 weeks earlier. They had assembled the largest swarm fleet in their history, over 2,000 bioships, and launched it at the human base at New Haven. The battle had lasted 47 minutes. Admiral Troy Adams, commanding the base's defenses, had used the engagement as a training exercise for new human tactical doctrines. The Vorthak fleet was systematically dismantled by weapon systems they couldn't even detect, let alone counter. The few surviving bioships had fled to the farthest edges of known space, carrying news of their defeat to the remaining hive mind nodes. Since then, the Vorthak had gone completely silent. Intelligence suggested they were retreating to their home systems to reconsider their entire approach to galactic expansion. As Collins stood on his observation deck, watching human ships patrol the space that had once been a Vorthak hunting ground, he reflected on what they had accomplished. The immediate mission, saving the Zephyrians, had been completed in a matter of hours. But the larger mission, establishing humanity as the galaxy's protector, would take generations. Captain Lisa Murphy's voice came over the communications system, interrupting his thoughts. Admiral, we're receiving a distress call from the Kepler 438 system. The Xerian species is reporting attacks by unknown raiders. They're requesting immediate assistance. Collins smiled. Signal the Third Fleet. Tell Admiral Sullivan to respond with full force. And Murphy? Yes, sir. Make sure the galaxy knows we're responding. I want every species out there to understand that when innocent people call for help, humans answer. As he watched the massive ships of the Third Fleet power up and begin their jump to faster-than-light travel, Collins knew that this was just the beginning. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy not as conquerors or diplomats, but as guardians. Age of predator species hunting helpless prey was ending. The age of human protection was just beginning, and the galaxy, whether it liked it or not, was about to become a much safer place for anyone who chose to live in peace.